So welcome to the March 2016 New Mexico Drought Monitoring Workgroup call. This is Dave Dubois down in Las Cruces, and as we do every month, we'll go around the call. Please identify who you are and where you work.
Morning, this is Raymond Abato of Bureau Reclamation in Albuquerque.
Anne Marie Mathern with USGS.
Ken and Julie, Office of the State Engineer.
Brian at the National Weather Service.
There are two of us here in Los Ranchos.
Okay. Anybody else?
Brad Rippey, Department of Agriculture, and this week's U.S. Drought Monitor author.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Any other folks? Alrighty. Well, oh, go ahead. I didn't know if that was somebody trying to go in. Okay, so looks like Brian has got the agenda up, and in the background he's got the Weather Service presentation, Weather Service reports. So go ahead, Brian. Why don't you go ahead and get started?
Okay, thanks, Dave. Well, we are certainly not where I thought we would be at this time right now. I'll just kind of review, like we normally do, some of the month's data here the past 30 to 60 days. And unfortunately, the situation is becoming quite dire. So for February, we were below normal, 52% of normal statewide precipitation. See the image in the upper left is the observed precipitation, which in most areas there was none, especially across the south and up towards Albuquerque and westward. The lower right, you can see the departures from normal. Pretty much everybody well below normal, except for a couple splotches up in the northeast where we did have a few minor systems. And then on these graphics, I wanted to throw in on this bottom right just a little insert of what the Climate Prediction Center's outlook was for February when we were doing our meeting back in January. So you can see this 50% contour is pretty much exactly where everything has been below normal. So it's kind of interesting to see a forecast call for such high probabilities and then have widespread below normal precipitation, in some cases not even any measurable precipitation. As we go into March, it's even worse. Just about everywhere has had no precipitation. I think at my house here by UNM, the last time I actually measured any precipitation was like January 9th. So we're pushing 3 months here. Across the bottom right, you can see everyone well below normal. And in the insert here, this was the March outlook from CBC. And again, it's pretty much the area that is the driest in the entire country is within the area where they had the highest probabilities of above normal precipitation. So certainly the climate forcing, the El Nino, is doing what we would not have expected it to do as we push through March. And if we take a look at the next 10 days from the forecast models, it doesn't look like central and southern New Mexico are going to see anything. So we're going to be clearly pushing 3 months with no measurable precipitation in a few areas. And what that's effectively done is wiped out the snowpack. For most basins, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains are still holding strong, while the rest of the state is pretty much, it's been decimated, especially across the south, compared to where we were at in early January. So the forecast today is calling for widespread red flag conditions, high winds, very, very dry. So we're going to take a big hit today across the Sangre de Cristo Mountains with that snowpack being sublimated. Even Colorado is starting to see some issues across their south. Well, these numbers are still pretty good, but you can tell that the reflection of that, those drier conditions are spreading northward into Colorado. Just a quick summary of where Rio Grande at Embudo is with respect to the runoff. The orange is the provisional water data from USGS, and we're running somewhere around where we would be at the end of April to early May. Again, this happened last year, and so we're seeing 2 years in a row now with way early runoff, and I think this is now the 6th spring in a row with well below normal snowpack statewide. If we go, let's take a look at these charts here real quick. February was the 29th driest, below normal, as I said earlier. Interestingly, 9 out of the last 11 Februaries have been below normal. And if we look at the calendar year so far for the first 2 months, 67% of normal, and 8 out of the last January, Februaries have been below normal. So we're getting into this pattern where our late winters are just incredibly dry. Looking at the legacy precipitation summaries on the left, it's January, February. You can see most of the state well below normal. While on the right, we've got the water year. And if it wasn't for the first 3 months, October through December, we would be in really big trouble right now. We've already seen fires, and today is just going to make it worse. So while a good chunk of the state is above normal on the water year, the last 2.5 months have been exceptionally dry. And looking at the water year here, 149% of normal, but like I said, it's really because of just the first 3 months. And much of eastern New Mexico was way above normal as we closed out last year. And then the storm track just sort of shut off for us, and now we're into this windy pattern. So if we go back 12 months, you can see we still had above normal statewide precipitation. Things were looking pretty good. And over the last 24 months, still doing okay. And for the 36th month period, we're above normal as well. But if you go back to the 48 and 60 months, we still see those real dry years forcing the averages down well below normal. So it's kind of misleading when we look at the longer periods because in the more recent months it's been so dry. Here's the NASA Sports Land Information System graphics. This is deep soil moisture change. So for a 1 month period. On the left, this is what the change was at the end of February compared to how it was at the end of January. So this is a 1 month change. We saw conditions drying out considerably across the Northeast and West Texas, and then much of Southwest New Mexico and Southeastern Arizona. If we look at that imagery from last Friday, the 1 month change is even drier. And the first thing that probably pops out is this area across the north where we had some snowpack feeding some of the soil of moisture, and that's even trended much drier. The most dry, though, is basically across the Southwest, where we did see D1 push back into that area on the most recent drought monitor. And there's also an area along the east slopes that really has dried out quite a bit, and that's somewhere that I'm interested in possibly seeing some expansion. Looking at, this is the first 10 centimeters of the volumetric soil moisture here. On the left, this is where we were in February. So you could see all that snowpack across the north. And then now here, March 18th, it's bone dry just about everywhere, especially the Rio Grande Valley out into the high plains of eastern New Mexico. So here we have the regional drought. The focus continues to be across California, although they're slowly eating it away. I know the Sierra Nevada has been doing pretty good, and the storm track has been really slamming much of the Northwest for quite some time now. But here in New Mexico, we're starting to see these abnormally dry areas increase, and I could argue for this really to be expanded further. Zooming into New Mexico, you can see most of Catron County now under D1, with abnormally dry conditions continuing to spread eastward. And our 3 month change, this is the first time with drought in New Mexico since early December of 2015. Okay, so now we'll go into what we're looking at out in the tropical Pacific right now. And the values are coming down for the sea surface temperature anomalies, as we were alluding to in our last meeting. The El Nino is starting to wane. And you can see that in the sea surface temperature anomaly departures for the various Nino regions. Most of the charts are starting to show, a downward trend. We had that peak back late last year. So values are all down below 2 now. And the forecaster model consensus, they continue to support El Nino, but not for much longer. We start seeing those blue bars increasing on that chart as we go out towards the summer and into next winter, with it looks like somewhere between a 50 and 60% probability that we'll have La Nina conditions by next winter. And I did see a note from one of the climate folks in Southern Region discussing the potential for a La Nina watch to be issued here at some point in the near future. So here's the IRI and CBC chart showing that downward slide with the sea surface temperature anomaly across the equatorial Pacific. So there is a large spread in the different dynamic and statistical models, but you can see the thicker line there in the center going below 0 to a negative anomaly as we get out into late summer into the winter period. And here is the CBC April 2016 outlook, and so you can kind of take that how you want, but given what we've seen in the last 2.5 months, my confidence is just really, I don't really feel like I can advertise this much. I guess that's all I'll say about that. The storm track does look like it's going to be across Colorado, so at least, we'll see for maybe the first part of this some precipitation to the north of New Mexico. And the temperature outlook showing the above normal probabilities in the outlook expanding eastward from the west. And then again, the 3-month outlook for April, May, and June still showing the probability of above normal precipitation across New Mexico. And we'll have to be a big pattern change for this to happen. So fingers are still crossed, but it's been a bit depressing given what's happened over the last 2.5 months. And same for the temperature outlook there showing below normal, which it's had across Texas for quite some time. But if you look at some of the anomaly charts, this really isn't following suit. So we'll see what happens in the next 3 months. And then summer precipitation, equal chances, and as all of you know, it's the monsoon doesn't necessarily follow any specific patterns when it comes to trying to figure out whether we're going to see above normal precipitation. And I'm not familiar with any studies out there about how the summer precipitation pans out after El Nino years. And on the right, we've got, looks like it's going to be a warm summer probably across much of the United States. The seasonal outlook does show that drought development is likely across Arizona into more of New Mexico, with drought persisting in that brown area from Catron County into the east central Arizona. And then before I end here, I wanted to just look at where we are at by climate division across the state for the last 90 days. And the average of all the climate divisions is 74% of normal. There's one climate division that is above normal for the 90-day period. That's that southeast. That's a strong reflection of how wet it was at the end of last year. As we go to the last 60 days, the average of all 8 divisions is only 28% of normal. So that's the last 2 months, with climate division 8 as low as 9% of normal for precipitation. And the last 30 days is really kind of bad here, 18% of normal statewide. So I know I went through that information kind of quickly. We can take some questions now here, or we can kind of hold off and have a discussion later once we hear more from others.
So there's no real definite guarantee of anything, I guess, the next couple months.
Sorry, what was that?
So there's no really real strong feeling that the precip for the next couple of months as far as snowpack. And there's no confidence whatsoever in that. Thing.
I mean, I think my own personal feelings are more showing here because of what we've seen, and I don't really, I don't know necessarily what the confidence is from CPC either, but given what I'm seeing in the storm track and at least out in the extended range, I don't see any reason for change right now. So maybe, in a few weeks from now, things will change for us. But certainly the snowpack is already in a situation where we're seeing runoff. It's peaking again, or it's not peaked yet, but it's way early, and we're going to have several wind events, so the snowpack is just going to be pretty much gone, I would think, south of I-40, except for maybe shady areas. And then any of the snowfall that we would get in the next few months, it tends to battle the wind and the warmer temperatures, so it doesn't tend to stick around as long.
Yeah, everything else, water operations works on here.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Any other comments, questions? All right. Yeah, I think if Brad can stay on a little longer, I think I want to hear kind of some of the other reports. Are you okay, Brad? You have time to stay on a little longer?
I'm fine for right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll stick on for a little bit.
Okay. Raymond, are you ready to talk about reservoir status?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Okay, I'll start on the Rio Grande. Patrol is 13,734 acre feet. Aaron, 74,840. Alvaro, 43,916. Abacu, 133,190. Cochiti, 47,102. Elephant View is 430,213. And Caballo, 31,799. And on the Pecos, Santa Rosa, 99,286. Sumner, 43,915. Brantley, 34,981. And Avalon, 1527. Well, it's pretty sad after hearing that news. We are starting to see a lot of the snowpack kind of just blow away or melt away. We are out of Article 7 on the Rio Grande, so we're trying to capture what we can in Novato. But you see, we're just barely up to 40, almost 44,000. So we're not sure what we'll see there. Heron, we'll be running the tunnels through Azotea and kind of see what the San Juans produce for us. But we're still pretty low there, almost 75,000. But MRGCB is diverting, but they're going easy on the river, which is nice. We haven't had any problems keeping the river wet there yet, so we haven't used any supplemental, which is really good. On the Pecos, of course, we're fully connected. We're wet. Both districts are operating. We have no problem yet keeping the river connected. We have a little bit of bypass coming out of summer. But so otherwise, we're doing well. We'll just see what the runoff produces. We're starting to see flows up higher at Ancon Chico and above Santa Rosa. So we'll just see what it produces. I'm not sure if anyone's seen Wesner recently before we hear from that today, so I'm kind of curious on that. I did hear it drop below 100. percent already. So, anyways, we'll just see what this year produces. As usual, we'll just deal with what nature gives us. 1.5. No, otherwise that's what I have.
Okay, thanks, Raymond. Any questions for Raymond?
I still really need to combine this with Raymond.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I see Chris on the go-to. Are you on, Chris?
I sure am, yes.
All right.
Sorry, I jumped on a few minutes late there. I got wrapped up in another project, so I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Glad
All
you're on.
right, so yeah, I saw your slides on the snowpack, so I won't belabor that issue, but this has really been, a tale of two winters. We were really front-loaded at the beginning of the water year. November, December, January. I was, really set for the El Nino that was as advertised, and then it kind of dwindled off. And our numbers now are only attributed to, like you said, the good precip and snow that we received at the beginning of the winter. Pretty much south of I-40, you're looking at 0 on the snowpack, and then, north of I-40 up in the northern mountains, it's like 70, 60, 50%, and then it's bare ground out in the Zuni as well to the west. And then over in the Chusca on the state line, last I checked, they had about 12 to 15 inches, but that was about a week ago, so that's probably almost gone as well. We are, getting to that point where it's starting to run off. I was looking at some graphs that I put together for a Taos Water Conservation District meeting, and I was looking at runoff last year and melt out as compared to this year, and we're a couple weeks earlier in some places. So yes, we are starting to see runoff. I'm waiting for it to peak. If the temperatures continue as they have been, then it's going to be fairly soon. We were pretty lucky about 3 weeks ago when it started to warm up. The snow water equivalent actually remained pretty consistent because the snow was melting and then refreezing in the evening when the temperatures dropped. So a lot of that water content remained, and there hadn't been a lot of wind, so there was no wind on or dust on wind to kind of activate the snow melt, and sublimation hadn't been a problem, but the winds have picked up, like you said, and we're starting to lose what remaining snow we have due to wind events and the temperature. So, I try and remain honest but not pessimistic when I talk about it, but kind of like you said, I think climatologically, any snow that we get, even in the northern mountains, isn't going to be able to hold on for very long, just to the fact that it's going to begin to warm up as we move further into spring, and the El Nino has that sharp decrease, so I would expect temperatures to increase as well. But I guess does anybody have any questions or expand on anything? Hello?
No questions for Chris?
I was going to make sure.
Yes.
I was like, did the
No.
call drop?
No, I made sure. Didn't want to cut in.
No, that's fine. I saw your slides. They pretty much are the slides that I would have thrown up. But yeah, that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of it.
It's kind of bad news all around.
Yeah.
That's why I say try and be honest, but not pessimistic about it.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Moving on to USGS, Anne-Marie.
Okay. This report presents stream flow conditions for the 2016 water year, so it's cumulative from October to the end of February, looking at 21 river basins that are chosen to represent relatively unmanaged conditions. Normal is considered to be 90 to 100% of average, and based on that, 18 of the 21 stations were at or above average flow. So again, these are really weighted by the wet fall that we had, and based on previous discussion, I'm thinking that it might be better to start breaking these out as well, maybe by quarters and months. And so I'll give some thought to that before our next meeting and see if I can come up with some different ways of presenting this. But based on the current analysis, the high was the Gallinas Creek near Montezuma, which is at 208% of historical average, and the low is Canadian River near Taylor Springs, which is at 35% of historical average. So that's the range we're looking at, and the median annual average is about 120% of average for these 21 basins. Going through the basins, runoff conditions by basin. San Juan River Basin is represented by the gauge on the Animas River, which is number 19 in that table, and that's sitting at 107% of average. The Upper Rio Grande tributaries are numbers 7 through 12. Those are ranging from 77 to 201% of average. Jemez River, number 13, is at 93% of average, which is pretty good compared to what it's been in the past few years. And the Upper Rio Grande main stem, number 9, looking at the Rio Grande at Taos Junction Bridge, that's at 106% of average. Moving to the Canadian River Basin, the headwater tributaries in Colfax counties, that's numbers 1, 2, and 3, range from 122 to 150% of average. Lower down in Mora County, numbers 5 and 6, 82 to 166% of average. And on the main stem, number 4, that's the low one, that's at about 35% of historic average for that particular gauge. In the Pecos Basin, the Upper Pecos in San Miguel County is represented by gauges 14 and 15, Pecos River at Pecos and the Gallinas at Montezuma. And these are at 114 and 208% of average, respectively. The Lower Pecos in Otero and Eddy counties, numbers 16, 17, and 18, have streamflow conditions ranging from 114 to 167% of average. And the last two in the Gila Basin in Grant County, sites 20 and 21, Mogollon Creek is at 143% of average, and the Gila River at Red Rock has streamflow conditions that are at 120% of average. And so that's what we have at this point, and again, it's based on the entire water year, so it does include those wetter months in the fall. And that's all I have, unless there are any questions. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Anne-Marie.
What? Why don't you just use the mic off? Huh?
Well, I think, like you mentioned, that those are reflecting a lot of the earlier in the water year. Okay, any questions for Anne-Marie?
The Gallinas Creek one is interesting there near Montezuma, that it's so high. We had one event, I think it was in late January. It was like a little snow band that set up over that area, and they got like 30 inches of snow.
Wow.
I'm guessing a lot of that came from that too. That one event was pretty significant. That was actually one of our biggest events we had all year. But it was just over a small area, and I think it may have just been right within that basin there, like up towards Rosiata and Gascon and Chacon.
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking that it might be interesting, given that things seem to be kind of shifting a bit, to break break this analysis out a little bit more by either quarter or months or something so we can see exactly where some of these changes are.
Okay. Well, again, thanks, Anne Marie, for that report. Move on to Office of the State Engineer. I think we have Julie and Ken.
Hi, this is Julie. So here's a report. I'll just let Brian catch up. So our current storage is from yesterday, March 21st, from USAC, and from the previous month of February 22nd. Everything except for we got from USGS from March 21st, and and for the comparisons was using the March 21st of 2015. Okay, next slide, please. And this slide just shows that the dark blue is the current, the dotted green line is the previous month, the red straight line is the average, and the yellowish background is last year's numbers. Okay, next slide. Okay, Navajo, there's not a whole lot of change. Navajo is up about 30,000 from the previous month. And then there's not a whole lot of change. U is pretty much the same it was last month. Next slide. Santa Rosa, no big change there as well. Kind of the same as last month. Sumner had a slight decrease, but I'm thinking they're still releasing water from there. But it's just a small, maybe 2,000 acre feet. Next slide. Brantley's pretty much the same it was last month as well. No big change. It's well below the average though. Heron had a slight increase, but not much. It was up about 5,000 acre feet. Alvado had actually a bigger increase, but I think that's, Raymond did say that they are capturing a lot more water in Alvado, so that makes sense. It's only up about 8,000 acre feet. IBQ, pretty much the same as it was last month. No big changes. Elephant Butte had the biggest increase. Has increased about 80,000 acre feet, and it's still well below the average. And Caballo, no big change from the previous month. And the last one just will show the current last year and the numbers, average, and previous month. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right. Thanks, Julie.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, I heard from Les, and he's not able to be on, and also Susan. It was just sent me an email, said she's not available today, and we're getting a new FSA representative. I got an email from Emelita. Said she's retiring at the end of April, so we're gonna get her replacement is gonna be Anthony Chavez, and they're all doing a training this morning, so he was not able to be on, but we'll get him on next month. And I think what she told me that he's gonna be doing the secretarial designations and the disaster programs, and we'll have a lot to offer, so we'll stay tuned for that. All right, any other topics? I want to talk about the drought monitor. Some changes. I think we're due for some major changes. I think looking at the climate division and also the PRISM, looking at the monthly deteriorations throughout the calendar year. And I did get an email from Victor. I think, are you still on, Victor?
Yeah, I'm here, Dave.
Okay.
I joined a few minutes late. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And, I agree with that. I think the majority of the state is in that pre-drought status. I know definitely down here, and I don't know. What do you think, Dave? Dave Novlin? Just connecting up with.
Yes, we're seeing that's maybe even a little more extensive in the southern Diana and Otero there. I know El Paso, at least now, we're starting to get only about 50%. So it's starting to creep in.
Yeah.
So, unfortunate.
Right. So I would even think. I drove around yesterday through Hidalgo and a little bit in Grant, and we could even expand the D1 further south. I know we're thinking of going further north into Cibola and McKinley. That's the D1 area, and I can see that on the go-to slide. But then connecting up the yellow, the D0, basically connecting it right across New Mexico. I think we can support that.
Dave, this is Brian. That falls in line with exactly what I would want to do. Just connect the D0 all the way over and expand the D1.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Yeah, hey, Dave, this is Victor. My general suggestion would be just a broad brush expansion of D0 to cover the entire state.
Yeah.
The entire state looks equally bad, and I would maybe suggest expanding the D1, northward into, I guess it's McKinley County, and then perhaps southward down to the Texas-New Mexico border, and maybe expand eastward by about half a county to one county or so.
Yeah. No, I would go along with that.
You can't do two categories of degradation, but I think in that the area of the areas of southwest and western New Mexico that are already in D0, I think probably maybe it's sort of taking the D1.
Yeah, I would agree. I would definitely also move it south.
This is Brad, this week's author. Do you guys have a copy of the draft which shows the expansion that I did of D1, both north and south from the existing last week's position? If you don't, that's fine, but it does show.
Yeah, okay, I do see it now.
D1.
Yeah, I see the draft too. I just opened up the email. So yeah, going into the western side of Hidalgo, into the Boot Heel. Yeah, I think that's a good depiction of what we need to see, because there's some playas out there that used to have water, but all the water is almost evaporated from those playas in Hidalgo County. So just to show that as.
Hey Brad, this is Victor. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it looks good. I would say maybe just expand it northward, by one county up into McKinley County, and then expand it eastward by one half county to one county.
Yeah, go into Socorro.
You're talking the D1, Victor?
Yes, based on your draft one.
Yeah, I would move D1 through Socorro County. That kind of that belly part there in the middle, just kind of move it east. Yeah, I think that would look good. And then run D0. Just do a fill.
Any thoughts about keeping D0 just down to that one part of east central New Mexico where they've had a slightly wetter signal the last 60 days, or do you think it's dry enough to warrant just going almost a broad brush D0 statewide at this point?
Was that over like Guadalupe and San Miguel? I saw in the February. Are you looking at the February?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, there's, I wouldn't really leave anybody out at this point.
Okay.
There was like 6 fires in Guadalupe County already in the last few. And we had that fairly big fire down south of Albuquerque on Sunday.
Right.
So yeah, I see what you're talking about, these little splotches there.
I'm gonna look at Tucumcari. See what they're. Yeah, they've. I'm just looking at the consecutive days, and not considering a trace or a hundredth, and it's been more than a month. It's been like February 2nd since they've had a good precip. There's not much.
Yeah, and especially in these conditions, it seems like, 3/400ths is really not going to do anything.
Right.
When it's this dry for such a long period, you need to really start racking up consistently, having at least 500ths, I would think. And of course, we want a tenth, which would be wetting.
Yeah.
But those number of events are near zero.
Yeah, and when we're moving into the normally dry part of the season, so I think if we need to do it today. I mean, this week, because I typically don't like to do a lot of changes during the driest part anyway. But then
Right.
and then holding it and to see what's going to happen through the rest of the spring. Unless there's some major
Yeah,
change.
I certainly. I don't want to end up having to be in a situation where we go from D0 to D2.
Right. Yeah, and then that would. I don't think we can do that.
Or D3 even.
Right.
I suspect if things keep up this way, we'll start seeing D2.
Yeah, kind of preparing the way, and I hope it doesn't occur that way with La Nina, but there's a good chance of that. Okay, good. I think we've got a plan, and I think Brad knows where to go.
Yeah, sounds good to me. I've got no. I mean, it's obviously was borderline, so I wanted to hear what everybody had to say.
Okay, very good. At least we got a plan. I wouldn't say we're in a good situation, but not a good situation. Okay. Any other discussion? Other points anybody want to bring out?
We'll be looking at blowing dust today to see how dry it really is. I know it doesn't take a whole lot, but we've got the blowing dust imagery from NASA Sport, and hopefully we'll get a good image this afternoon that shows some of those source regions activating across certain areas of the state. And I can share that if we do get a good image here from one of the polar orbiting imagers.
That'll be awesome. Yeah, and we'll be doing the same down here. I'm sure Dave and folks down here will be looking at our sources in Chihuahua and southwest New Mexico.
And then just in the last month, we published our dust paper was published onto the Journal of Operational Meteorology, so you can find that here. It's fuel and all, and that was an extensive project that took a couple of years. So you can download the PDF here from the National Weather Association webpage.
Awesome. It looks like a excellent resource.
That's all I've got.
All right.
Thanks for everyone's help.
Yeah. Yeah, and just as another side note, we've got a meeting, and there's a IWT meeting, and this is for Dave's shop down in Santa Teresa, and then simultaneously we've got a meeting with NRCS BLM at the Lordsburg Playa to look at potential mitigation discussion about what needs to be done at some of the dust sources down here, and it couldn't come any at a better time because I think we'll be, looking at it from my point of perspective, a fairly active spring for dust, I think. So, if anybody's interested, let me know. Okay, so we'll move on to the scheduling of our April call, and